to Tackle and Talk podcast, where our aim is to nurture minds and inspire souls. And today's topic is an interesting one. We're going to explore the world of Gen Z and their journey into entrepreneurship while addressing some really crucial topics and obstacles that they might be avoiding post-college burnout. And I like this new phrase instead of burn out, burn on. So what does burn on mean? It actually means that we have so many options, especially Gen Z, that because of these options, they're not able to make the choices and they get stuck, if you will. Imagine a car that's in the sand and going at it with their wheels, trying to get out, trying to move forward ahead in their journey to entrepreneurship. And today we have a very special guest, my colleague and friend, Hassan Habib, also known as HassanSpeaks, because his hashtag and everything online, so you can find him easily, is HassanSpeaks. He's actually, the way we met is quite interesting. He was in one of the entrepreneurship seminars, and he was actually speaking just about this topic we're going to address today. And it was really intriguing because he really had amazing, insightful thoughts. And of course, he's an amazing speaker. I was inspired, and I wanted to bring him on to inspire my audience as well. As I mentioned earlier, Hassan is known for his hashtag HassanSpeaks. He's an entrepreneurial powerhouse with a passion for shaping the future through technological innovations and ethical leadership. And I like that point because in leadership, we have to actually understand what we're trying to deliver and make sure it's in an ethical basis, right? His expertise is, of course, AI. He has served as a catalyst for digital transformation across a multitude of industries. Hassan also has a unique talent for identifying potential and turning innovative ideas into reality, positioning him as a significant force in the entrepreneurial landscape. His acumen is take that over. Ready? 1, 2, 3. His acumen is revered across industry lines, but it is his commitment to values such as environment, social, and of course, governance principles, sustainable development goals, diversity, inclusion that truly sets him apart. His commitment also extends to the often overlooked yet very crucial sphere of mental health, particularly within the Gen Z demographics, demonstrating his understanding of the variations of complexities of modern society. And this is exactly it that I was talking about with burnt on or burnt in instead of burnt out, where we have so many choices now with technology that they actually get stuck in their ways. Actually, Hassan also is a multilingual and appreciates the paramount of importance of communication in entrepreneurship. That's why he's actually an amazing speaker. His linguistic abilities allow him to bridge cultural divides, fostering a diverse and inclusive atmosphere that is conducive to innovative thinking and business growth. I'm so excited to have our guest Hassan today. Hassan speaks, and he's going to speak on amazing value, focus, and be able to address most of the obstacles that Gen Z might be experiencing, and that the learnings he has from his experience with working in universities or mentoring in universities. Yeah?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. That was pretty generous, and I appreciate that. An amazing and very relevant topic that we are here for today. And I think in the current times and scheme of things, especially post-pandemic, these topics have emerged with even much more brighter light upon them. And that is for many reasons. Especially we have seen over the past 3 years, when moving out of the pandemic, where pandemic slowed us down not to zero, but perhaps into negative. When we came out of it, it was not about going back to 1x, it was about going to 2x. Okay. So such developments in human behaviors have been highlighted throughout the global world, and UAE is no different. things like depression, anxiety, mental health took a center stage when we were coming out of the pandemic. So excited to be here, delighted to be here. Thank you so much
We're very
for having
excited
me.
to have you because as I let them know about your background with the universities and working with Gen Z, because I kind of gave just a simple overview. Just give us some experience of what you feel are some of the Gen Z obstacles that we want to address today.
Absolutely. So Gen Z coming out of the pandemic, who are taking the center stage now, they're certainly the ones who are creating the landscape for the future, be it industry-wise, be it social-wise. The value system is very different. They're very much value-based when it comes to their in the type of environment that they'd like to work, be it in a job or even on entrepreneurial initiatives. They're more driven towards impact-driven initiatives. So even if like social entrepreneurship, for example, is one area. And even in the technological field, I think the value system that they carry with them when it comes to values such as the ESGs, the SDGs, mental health, what we are here for today as well, are part of their core value system. So, and that's one of the reasons that we had a lot of across the global world, hiring Gen Z is not easy, and because there is definitely a gap when it comes to what Gen Z see as how the world should be, for example, especially when it comes to professional career. And how it may perhaps be. I think we're living through transitory times. We will be seeing this transition over the next decade as Gen Zs not only enter the workforce, but also develop themselves within their career and come to higher positions at a later stage, and then drive the entire change by themselves. So currently, Gen Zs are very much focused on environmental impact, focused on well-being, focused on achieving, creating a legacy. Back in the days, you would have noticed a lot of times the decision-making metric was the dollar sign.
Right.
And that has changed over time today to what kind of impact am I creating by doing this work.
Right.
Even if I'm getting paid for it, I want to get paid for it in a fair manner. But at the same time, I want to be doing something that will create an impact going forward. So these are some value systems that Gen Zs really resonate with and are very relatable to them. And part of that, the heart of it is also mental health. So the moment they feel, for example, burned out, that is a sign for them that maybe this is not working for you. How about doing something different? Or creating a mechanism to be more resilient towards burnout. Now, burnout is just one aspect of mental health, right? And we are talking here about numerous
struggles that they're,
Absolutely.
Right.
So let's take a step back, perhaps, and understand what do they actually go through.
Right.
And not just Gen Zs, but
Yeah.
others. But Gen Zs tend to be, by statistics, they tend to be more aware of themselves and more aware of mental health scenarios. Where if you go back, let's say one generation, people would cope with it. It's like, oh, it's part of life, do with it. Life is not easy, you must persist. Come to our millennial generation, we were perhaps a little bit more aware. Like, no, it's not working for me.
Right.
And then also to be realistic, economically speaking, across the globe, opportunities kept increasing. So there were choices that millennials could make in a better manner, perhaps, than the baby boomers before them. Now Gen Zs are in a better position than millennials are, and that's how the wheel of life and generations roll. But looking back a step, you have stress and burnout, for example. You have, for example, anxiety and uncertainty, especially when you see in the entrepreneurship field, anxiety and uncertainty is your best friend. And I say that in a perhaps not in a very bright light or positive light, but nonetheless, that is the reality.
Yeah.
In entrepreneurship, you have to be resilient to many negative, negative arrows thrown at you. You have to state them.
Right.
And that could cause anxiety. The uncertainty around it could cause anxiety. you don't know how your plan or your baby that you're working on the project would work or not work.
Right.
Right. And they are very much under pressure from a financial perspective because they've raised funds in order to do that. And from a social perspective because they need to prove themselves because they do not want to be labeled as you're a failure.
Right.
Or oh, it didn't work for him, so well, this is the next. So that is something that perhaps that they have to live with, and those are some pressures that cause high levels of anxiety in Gen Zs as well, and has high potential to lead to depression.
Yes.
And we have seen the cases of anxiety, the cases of depression, and stress over the COVID period, for example.
Absolutely.
And during COVID, it was pretty much evident. That's one of the reasons that the mental health took center stage, because the cases of mental health continued to rise to an extent that perhaps it could no longer be, let's say, unseen, or it could not stay below water. So it had to surface, and it did, and it made itself known that it is real.
Statistics-wise, yeah, because now we have more suicidal tendencies in this generation than any other generation.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and we've seen those even during the COVID, where even the actors, for example, in different industries around the world, were not immune to this kind of impact and effect. And either they lost lives in the process, or they were really through a hard time. So that has a potential of reaching to extreme levels.
Right.
And then hence people who tend to think about or tend to have suicidal tendencies. Another thing, for example, is imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Right. And that's pretty common. These are some of the words perhaps 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not enough. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Self-doubt in terms of, I'm just not enough.
Right.
If someone comes up to you and tell you, and they keep continuing to say, you can't do this, you haven't done that, or and so forth, what happens is then that's just the imposter syndrome builds in.
Right.
And then you lose self-confidence in the process. And then not only that, on your entrepreneurship side just dies out, but also your career, if you even choose to do something else, for example, you're unable to do anything with confidence.
Right.
And we are well aware of the trends. For example, today self-confidence is a basic skill or a competency needed for not only just entrepreneurship, but even when you go for a job interview.
Right.
The first thing you're assessed on is how confident are you in what you say.
Right.
You don't have to know everything, but you have to exert that confidence in your interaction and in your communication.
Right.
You also have entrepreneurs, which is pretty common, especially now in Gen Zs, is they go through a lot of phases of isolation and loneliness.
Yes.
So you have to build your self-resilience in that space.
Entrepreneurship is of itself, you feel like you're the only one, right? You don't have your family support sometimes, or they just don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, because they don't have the passion you have, or they don't have the mission or vision, if you will, that we all aspire to in our, when we're building our business as a business model, right?
Absolutely.
That alone, you feel lonely, right? On top of that, continue please with the Gen Z, how they actually compounded with the loneliness.
So I think that's also a product of, people start judging you based on their own metrics, but you as a product. So it's not apples to apples at the end of the day. Now, I know you really well, for example, but I don't know you enough to understand why you take the decisions, the kind of decisions that you take, why do you take them, right? And I start judging you on that. And this is not right for you. I always have this conversation with entrepreneurs, and I tell them, look, this is your baby, right? What I can advise you, or perhaps I can talk to you about, or suggest you, are based on my understanding of you, but only you know how deeply this means to you.
Right.
So I can perhaps tell you from an objective lens what kind of skills you possess in order to get this done, or what you need in order to get this done. But there will be so many routes that are open to you, that are close to me.
Right.
The reason being, passion is something I cannot understand.
Right. Exactly.
It's only felt, and the feeling is very localized to that particular person.
Right.
So in that sphere, I will not be able to advise someone that you don't have enough passion. how can you judge passion in a person?
Right.
If he feels it, I don't know if he's awake until 4 a.m. trying to think about these things, right?
Sure.
I don't live with him, for example. I don't know him that well. I perhaps would sit with him at 7 p.m., 8 or 9 p.m. and then I leave.
Right.
For me, that day is over. For him, the day just started because he just took everything in that I was talking to him about, and now he has to work all night to get it done.
Right.
So this is one way you show passion, perhaps, which is again in the shadows. And all this, there's I would perhaps like to pinpoint this. Success is always hidden in the shadows.
Yes, I like that.
And that is something that I think entrepreneurs need to live with, understand it, breathe it, live it. Nothing that is obvious, it will has the potential to lead to success as much as what stays in the shadows and how you perceive and perhaps digest what's in the shadows. So what is obvious is what people see, and people judge you based on that.
Sure.
But if success doesn't lie there, all right, then what is the judgments? Why do they matter?
Right.
So your way forward is more behind the scenes than it is in front of the scenes.
Right.
So I think this is very important that we must understand that. And then on top of that, the entrepreneurs have to go through the financial stress, borrowed money, be stressed to generate ROI, for example, for the investors, and so forth. And there's so many metrics and ratios that they have to follow, and it always becomes a number game. What I think there seems to be a mismatch sometimes between investors and entrepreneurs, because investors tend to see the funding as a means of investments, and the return on it.
Right.
But for the entrepreneur, it's about creating a legacy.
Yeah.
So it's not only, yes, there needs to be a positive return, otherwise the business dies out.
Yeah.
But for him, the priority is first the quality, to create a legacy.
The impact.
The impact.
The value. Yes.
Absolutely. And once that's established, then optimize the returns. Perhaps that's the goal. And that is not how the investors see. So I've had numerous conversations with entrepreneurs. I'm like, look, in your fundraising rounds, be selective in who you work with, and who you borrow from, or who you take investments from.
Yes.
Because if
I remember we had that conversation, right?
Yes, it was an entrepreneurship forum over there, and that conversation was very enlightening to me as well. And that's exactly some of the things that we neglect today.
Yeah.
As entrepreneurs or as investors, investors need to understand the same thing. That the value systems need to meet to match. And there's no right or wrong here. It's about priorities. And if the priorities are not synced between the two, then you'll definitely have conflicts. Not only just conflicts, but then the business suffers.
Absolutely.
The project suffers. And then that is exactly what you've been trying to avoid from the
beginning. Yeah.
Right.
That's why you wanted to get the funds so it doesn't suffer.
Absolutely.
So you give it all, and that financial wouldn't be a burden or wouldn't be an obstacle in the way of delivering the impact. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then it becomes an irony or paradox.
Yes.
in the long scheme of things.
Yeah.
So that's very important, to match the value systems, to match the understanding, and then carry on with that, because any long-term commitment requires that, and entrepreneurship is not a short-term commitment.
No, it's not. Yeah.
I recently was having a discussion with a couple of entrepreneurs also looking into certain projects, and we were having the same discussion, and what I found out is from my conversation was they just wanted to raise money and start a project. And I said, okay, then what?
Right.
It's like, then I'm going to do this. Okay, then what? Then you went to point B and point C. And I said, okay, what are the variables in your journey which you've not even considered? You've been talking about the business, you'll get the money, and you're going to do this with the money, and that with the money. But the money's coming from somewhere.
And projections, and we all these Excel sheets and all these numbers have to match, and you plug them in the right, where this amount is going to go, how can we lower the costs just to, make the whole picture that it's going to actually work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there was a very good term someone just today morning gave me. He said, it's like a hypnosis.
Yeah.
When you're working with those numbers. So you must also learn to take breaks.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that was a very important message coming from that person is also that you need to understand that, you can't be always running at a high RPM constantly.
Right.
Right? If you put that even in your Lamborghini or Ferrari,
It's going to burn out.
It's going to burn out. The engine's going to see something's going to happen, and
Right.
then it will not be drivable anymore.
Right.
Although the cars are made for that, for example.
True.
So you as a human, you always need that kind of breather.
Right.
You need to
Reboot.
have, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we neglect that because we think that is loss of time.
Yeah.
But if you see from a productivity angle, if you are charged, your utility of productivity is higher than when you're not charged.
Right.
Right? You could be working 8 hours in a row and you get done a certain amount of work. But imagine if you take that 8 hours and slice it,
Yes.
right? And you take perhaps 10 minutes or 5-minute breaks or 15 minutes breaks, whatever works for you. Every person is different.
Some experts or even coaches, they say nap. A 10-minute, I was like, a 10-minute nap, and I'd be like.
The power nap.
The power
Yeah.
nap, yeah.
I've gone to, I've read about the power naps, and I think the sweet number is 8 minutes.
Yes,
So
true, yes, yes.
and that's what charges you up, and then
Yes.
you're back on. So when you calculate those, for those who are time-oriented in their approach, you'll be like, this is lost time. I'm not going to take that.
Right,
But they forget that it will affect the productivity going forward. So
exactly.
eventually the graph of energy keeps falling until you reach hour 8, and then it goes the next day or the next cycle. But if you take breaks, the productivity is much higher,
Absolutely.
statistically speaking as well. So, so there are proven case studies, there are proven researchers that prove this point. That it's, at the end of the day, it's about productivity. It's not about you put 16 hours into it.
Right.
It's like, and we've seen that even in work cultures. You have organizations that are time-oriented
Absolutely.
perform much poorly than organizations that are
The
task-oriented.
9 to 5, punching in,
Absolutely.
punching out, yeah. And
So I think it's about understanding the bigger picture in the larger scheme of things, and it's about being wise about the approach. Not everything that is obvious is the solution.
Solution,
At the end of
right.
the day. Second, what we have, the next point is digital distraction. We have
Yes,
a lot of digital
technology,
distraction.
yeah.
Technology, you will be able to, it will deviate you because everything's available at your phone now.
Right,
Back in the
fingertips,
days,
yeah.
I remember when I was growing up, my teens, and
Not too long ago.
no, I wish I could say that. Those seems like yesterday. But I had my mother, for example, and my late father. They would, at a certain point in the day and at night, 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., they would lock the room where the computer would be. So we were not able to use it again because we were at that time, internet was something happening. I think it
Yeah.
was early 2000s, put it that way. And I and my brothers would be
Sneaking
glued.
in?
Yeah, and we would actually find a key to the room because we know the computer is in that room, right?
Right.
And so the access to, let's say,
Distraction.
digital distractions was what could be more or less managed in that way.
Right.
But today, if it's in your phone,
Right.
you're just laying down and it's right next to you. You just pick it
Right,
up,
right.
and you even lose your sleep in that process.
Right.
Sometimes some people are so obsessed, let's say, from social media.
Oh,
that,
yeah.
I have to see how many likes did I get,
Right.
for example.
And that affects their confidence, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Their confidence, their sleep,
Yes,
and their
everything.
well-being, and this kind of the effect of this is definitely negative because you start comparing.
Right.
So, for example, if you go to Instagram now, and no one's talking about negatives.
No.
Everyone's like, my life is the best today,
Yeah.
and or my business is the best, or I've
Right.
achieved that,
Right.
or he may be flaunting with his car or
Right,
house or so,
right, right.
and you end up comparing.
Right.
Right? You forget that, okay, his journey was different than yours.
Right.
I mean, you're again not doing apples to apples. You're not
Right.
being fair
The
to yourself.
timeline, I always mention everybody's on their own timeline, right? Just because they're on their timeline, so it reached X, Y, and Z, and you're not there yet, doesn't mean that you are not as good or should be penalized because they're on their timeline and you're on your timeline. There's no comparison, right? Like the KFC guy, right? He was a millionaire at
Brilliant, yes.
Yeah, 70, right?
Yeah.
And then we have some Gen Z at 20 and they're, millionaires, right? Does that mean that the KFC guy is not as good as the 20-year-old? No, because they're on their timeline and they're on that timeline.
And that's a very important point because there are social pressures,
Yes.
especially in some cultures. What happens by 25 you need to get married, by 27 you have to have your first kid, by 30 you have to have your house.
That sounds like my mother.
and the thing is, we all have been through that,
yes.
right?
Yes.
So there are cultural expectations, there are social expectations, there are soft expectations, untold or untalked about, but they're there.
Right.
You feel them. You may not talk about them, or you were not talked to about them, but you do feel them that I need to do this. I have to be at a certain material place by a certain age.
Right.
And I think that's a very wrong way to approach life as general. Because someone at 30 who may have be able to afford a house, let's say it may be your brother or it may be someone else, your friend, your own father sometimes, that is because the reality of that situation, the context of life at that time was very different.
Right.
Today we see, for example, if you just take the metrics of the cost of housing,
yes,
over generations has only risen. So if someone was able to afford housing at age 30 in X year, that does not mean that today you can or you should be benchmarking or comparing with that. Right. And this is something also that Gen Zs need to understand, that it's not about numbers, it's not about the age, it's about milestones.
Right.
You have, what can you achieve by when? It does not.
There's no overnight success. My overnight success took 20 years.
I'm still finding mine.
Yeah, and I'm still on that journey. Exactly.
Absolutely. So I think it's all about being persistent, and consistency is important.
And resilience.
And resilience.
Yeah.
And for as long as you practice that, you would end up like the KFC person. You will be it later. And there's no harm in that, there's no shame in that.
No,
I think achievement is something that comes to you when it comes to you. You must continue to aspire for it.
Right.
You must continue to seek it. But you don't have to anchor it with an expectation at a certain time horizon that it needs to happen with you. I think that's really important. Another thing also that has been going on, especially post-pandemic, and since we are, we've been talking a lot about sustainability in the recent times over the past few years, is called eco-anxiety.
Yeah.
It is where you consistently want things to be eco-friendly, and you're not, you don't support. It's fine, you don't support the causes that are perhaps against the values of sustainability. But it is also important to understand that it has an effect on people who take sustainability very seriously.
Right. Because they want their resources when they get old, right?
Absolutely.
We have the resources now, but it doesn't mean that their resources are going to be there when they're for their own children and their grandchildren as well. So. And
I think eco-anxiety, while it may be even seen, it could be seen in a positive or negative light. If someone has that, let's say, eco-anxiety, could be seen, okay, because he's too obsessed with sustainability, or in a positive manner, that no, I need things to be sustainable. But the backlash, let's say, the impact that it has is that it pushes you back from your entrepreneurship initiative.
That's right. Yeah.
And what you need is exactly the opposite.
True.
Because chances are, because you have eco-anxiety, eco-anxiety, not eco-anxiety, but eco-anxiety, chances are your entrepreneurship initiative is in sync with your values.
Absolutely.
So it is expected to make a difference in this field in a positive manner. And the moment you set yourself back because of that, then what is expected to make a difference does not materialize.
Right.
So I think that is important to understand as well, that these are some of the common triggers for the Gen Zs today, and something that it resonates closely with their value system.
You mentioned a minute ago, which was really, really interesting. Stress for Gen Z can be potentially positive or negative, right? So what is your experience how to make it actually positive? Because it's energy, right? Stress is a form of energy, and it could go either way, right?
Right.
How do we make it positive? How can we make it that positive fuel to keep the Lamborghini going?
That's very, it's a brilliant question. So how you feel is also a product of the energy.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, energy is something that exists. You cannot, and you cannot eliminate energy. You cannot just destroy it. But what you can do is channel it.
Yes.
So rather than to give you an analogy, if something comes to attack you, rather than just sitting there, I think it's about circumventing it.
Right.
More, so it goes behind you.
Right.
Right. And that's exactly, I think, how we may want to approach stress as well, or mental health in general. Rather use it to increase your self-confidence. Take it as a challenge. Something hits you, like, no, I'm going to do that.
Right.
And I'm going to be persistent. I'm going to be resilient, and I'm going to be consistent at it. And I'm going to make this more as a weapon to develop that would help me to further develop myself. Let's say from a self perspective. So increase your self-confidence, and that is one way. Another way, for example, it also comes in any entrepreneurship journey. It is the satisfaction of creating a legacy, of creating something from scratch, creating your own story. Today, even in general workforce, when companies go to hiring, the candidates demand work-life balance.
Right.
Okay, what kind of work-life balance does your organization support?
Right.
Right. And the moment they realize that, say, this organization does not, they're less likely to work for that organization. And Gen Zs are very selective at that.
Yeah.
So that's really important to understand. That when you are on an entrepreneurship journey, you can write your own story, your own policies. You don't have to follow a policy.
Exactly.
You're writing your own policy.
You have your freedom. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you create your own livelihood around it.
Absolutely.
So you have the freedom to even have a work-life balance, but provided that you act upon it.
Right.
A lot of times in our endeavor to prove something, we lose ourselves in the process. We neglect ourselves. Self-care being one of them.
Yeah.
And the moment you do that, you're actually prioritizing that over yourself. And that's not the point.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you lasted longer, your project will last longer.
Right.
Right? So if it's actually an investment to have a healthy work-life balance, because then your engagement with that project will be longer. That's one thing. There's also a sense of community.
Yes.
So when entrepreneurship or entrepreneurs, for example, get together or are in that industry, they relate to each other.
They understand.
They integrate. They understand each other. So you get a sense of community in the process, and that is important, because where entrepreneurs are the most, I won't say misunderstood, but ununderstood or not understood.
Right.
I think entrepreneurs understand each other the best, and having solace in that, and having as a community to fall back on is very important.
Right.
Because okay, someone understands me. I can go out and talk about it, or I can befriend those people and keep myself in that company where I blossom.
Right.
Right? And it's important. It's like a garden.
Yes.
Right? And the flowers blossom when the climate is good and the environment is right for it too. So creating that environment in the process with the community is also an opportunity for growth.
Absolutely.
So whenever you're stressed, you must understand, yes, I'm down right now, but I have an opportunity at hand, and I have opportunity to do a lot of things, to even circumvent and overcome social pressures, expectations from as common as from your parents, for example.
Right.
Sometimes you're always there to prove it. I want to make my father proud. I want to make my mother proud, or I want to make my both parents proud.
You remind me of a story. I was just a young lady. She just graduated university. Smart young lady. And she was stuck. And she was when we got on a Zoom call. She's in the UK. I'm here, and she reached out to me, and I said, and she was on many projects. She was telling me, oh, I went on to as an intern at NASA. I was at this and that, and really I was impressed, right? And then she goes, but then I applied for this one job, I didn't get it, I'm a failure. And first of all, why aren't you celebrating the milestones that you achieved? You're a young lady, you just graduated university, celebrate. I mean, yes, we're told not to stay there because of course we won't grow. And of course, when you have failures, of course you're allowed to grieve, but as well not stay there because then again you don't grow. So I know you've worked with a lot of university students, and I felt her pain, and I had to really stop her and say, celebrate. Please celebrate your accomplishments, and just the one thing. They look at the one thing that they didn't achieve, and that's the failure. That's their whole, and that's their focus, right? And of course, that takes away a lot from their confidence and everything else.
No, very rightly said, and that's part of the imposter syndrome as well. Because the reason they associate this to failure is because it wasn't good enough. I couldn't do good enough.
Right.
I was not enough. And that's in your
exactly
subconscious
how
mind.
she was talking. Exactly. Maybe I don't have enough skill sets. I need to go back and get my a certain certification or some skill sets, or I'm not there yet. Why am I shouldn't have even applied, she said, to this particular, what was she thinking? And I was like, oh my God, like, the rabbit hole they get themselves into.
And that's also because they expect these opportunities or let's say they expect to run as soon as they're
Exactly.
born, right?
Exactly.
You need to first crawl.
Right.
And I say that to a lot of entrepreneurs also. As long as you're crawling and moving forward,
Exactly.
it's
You're moving
great.
forward. And if you fall forward. Yes.
And always remember, when you fall running, you get hurt more.
Exactly.
So crawl first and fall. That's okay. You will perhaps not even require a band-aid at that point.
Right.
You still continue. But once you crawl and you grow, and then you start walking and you grow, and then when you run, and you've mastered the art of moving.
Right.
And now when you run, your chances of falling are much less.
Right.
It's just like child growing up. A child does not, go from cradle to running.
Right.
You never see that. It learns to crawl.
Right.
First it learns to roll, then it learns to crawl,
Right.
then to walk, stand, and then walk, and then run.
Right.
So it's important to think of entrepreneurial projects or initiatives or startups in that.
Right.
It's your baby. There's a reason, the saying is, that's your baby.
Baby, right.
So if you're taking that analogy and that comparison in a good light, you will understand that just like the way baby grows,
Right.
these projects and these startups will grow too.
Right.
But you can't expect them to run right away.
Right.
Right?
But on the other spectrum as well, I do want to mention that they are saying now, in the future, and it's not in the far future, in the near future, there will be jobs or careers that don't even exist yet. That's how fast, everything's moving.
That is correct, and I think the development and the skills required are very different than it was perhaps in the millennials times and in the baby boomers time. But it's the transition is reality of life. What you need to understand is you need to focus on how you can add value to the process.
Right.
It's not about what should I study, what should I do,
Right.
right? It's about what skills can I develop through the education that will make me relevant and be able to add value.
Right.
Now, if you answer these questions will lead you to become what you perhaps ought to become.
Right.
And then you stay relevant, and you'll add value, and you'll not feel left out.
Right.
But a lot of, I think, university students also get lost in these petty questions. What should I study, and where should I work, or what should I do? And I'm like, take a step back, breathe in.
Right.
First, it's not about, first tell me where your passion lies. What kind of person are you? Assess yourself. Self-awareness is key to all success.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't know yourself,
Say that again.
self-awareness is a key to success.
Absolutely.
Knowing yourself will lead you to the right path.
Right.
Otherwise, you keep following, right?
Right.
And you don't want to follow. You're unique in yourself, and that's what you forget. And it's important to understand that I, as a person, I'm the only person in 8 billion people. That is me.
Unique. Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Now, there's no one else that can be me, and there's no one else I can be.
Right.
And the moment I am, all right, let's say theoretically, all right, just for the conversation's sake, the moment I become someone, then there are 2 of that someone.
Right.
And that someone becomes someone, there are 3 and 4.
Right.
Then we have half the world the same people, and the other half being very distinguished. Where will you head for talent?
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
So let's not forget, the skills or the experiences that we bring as our unique selves are unique to us. So let's focus on that. and try to, no one has the same goals as you do, no one has the same context of culture or upbringing or education or aspirations or even the mindset the way you do.
Right.
So you're unique in yourself, you need to understand that. And now you know yourself, all right, let's say you have a good self-awareness, you see yourself, okay, but how can I add value?
Yes.
And then make it my bread and butter, for example, right? Or create an impact, whatever might be priority for you. And then bring that change, work towards it. Because those are the skill sets that no one else, and 8 billion people out there have it.
This reminds me of the research, and I just want to, mention the statistics that actually one company, McKinsey & Co., they actually went across all the organizations at their top employees, and they analyzed, was it their skill sets, was it their experience, was it their education, was it their degree? And interesting enough, what you just said, it was their attitude. What they, as an individual, as their attitude, as the way they looked on the job or aspiring to the job, what they uniquely brought to the job was actually what made them the best employee of that organization. So the moral of the story is, yes, you could have the skill sets, you could have the education, the experience, but at the end of the day, companies today are looking for attitude. Look at Facebook, look at all the, Google, that's the first questions, and on their surveys they ask, what is your attitude towards this or that? Because that will make actually the difference, and would that attitude match the company organization's values and mission and vision as well?
Very spot on. I think you've just hit the heart of things. So future of work relies, when you talk about in the context of talent, relies on attitude and skill sets.
Absolutely.
We are going towards, perhaps over the next decade or so, we're going towards more skill-based hiring than qualifications, perhaps.
Exactly.
Because as technology takes, let's say, center stage into a lot of our work environments, right? I'm not saying it's going to replace you, but the thing is, you must stay relevant at the same time. So technology is there to augment your capabilities. If you're still at a very step, let's say at the floor level, and technology is in floor +1, then definitely the value is in floor +1.
Right.
And you can see further, it can do more. So there's a story that I always share because it taught me a lot, and this happened with me. So I once was in a class, and I entered the class, and it was math. And the moment I entered, the teacher came in, no talk, nothing. He just writes an equation on the board, turns around and says, solve. And all the students start solving. And I realized, about 3 minutes into solving, he's looking at me. And I was like, okay, now I'll just continue to solve. And I was writing and writing and writing and writing. And it took me about 7-8 minutes, but I got it done. And the moment I kept my pen down, he asked me, are you done? And I said, yes. He said, okay. And he continued to teach the class. No talk, nothing. After the class was over, he called me. He said, I noticed you took a little bit extra time solving than the rest of the class. I'm like, when was the class done? It took about 3 minutes average or so. But I saw you took more than 5 minutes. What happened? Did you attempt the question again? Did you not get the question? And I told him no. But I was solving, trying to, because I was doing it by my hand, it took me longer. Perhaps maybe that's why, maybe it was slow in writing. And he looks at me and he says, and he pulls a paper of someone else who solved. He said, look, his paper, it's 2-line, this is only just 2-line answer. Your page is full of text, right? Numbers everywhere. And this took more than 5 minutes. It took less than 3 minutes to solve. Answers are exactly the same. And he said, look, if I asked you to find out about a topic today that you don't know, let's say archaeology, right? And I tell you, give you a problem, how would you solve it? And I told him, I would Google it. He said, yes, you will Google it.
Fast, yeah.
It's fast. I said, why? He said, because I can find it on Google. He said, the crux is that there is technology to reach to that information that you're seeking.
Yes.
I noticed you had a calculator on your table, but you didn't use it. you couldn't graph the equation. You actually did it manually. When you have the calculator, why do that, right? And I started thinking to myself. I said, look, I will tell you something. It may stay with you all your life. I'm like, why? I said, when there's technology available, make use of it, because that is your stepping stone. You can see further. You'll be able to do further.
Right.
But if you're resistant to technology, right? Your first instinct would be, no, if I can do it myself, I'll do it. That means you're still on the floor. And you keep climbing again and again. If you're climbing from ground floor, your capacity to climb is, let's say, 3 floors. You'll always go 0 plus 3. But let's say technology is at 3rd floor. Now you take 3 plus 3 and you reach to the 6th floor.
Right.
Right. And he said that's what it is. And I think we need to understand that Gen Zs need to understand that yes, tech is there. But tech is there to augment them, not to replace. I think it is very important how we perceive technology and artificial intelligence and machine learning in today's world. It has the potential to put you on floor 3.
Right.
So let's not
stand on the shoulders, if you will.
Exactly, and do
beyond
beyond,
and do faster and better.
and faster and better. And that is important to understand in this lesson also that because there's a lot of anxiety around technology nowadays.
Yes, it's going to replace my job. I'm not going to have a future.
Absolutely. and as a result, there was a survey conducted in 2022 where among young adults, and 42% of young adults were found to have some sort of mental health condition.
Yes.
And that was and that's alarming. That means almost half of the young adults today out there have mental health situations. Where if you go a generation before, it was half of what it is today.
Yeah.
And before that was half. It's perhaps also related to, let's say, how we saw life at that point, or what kind of resources were available to us, what kind of context of life there was today. There's perhaps higher competition. Back in the days, it wasn't. Many aspects, but nonetheless, the numbers are alarming.
Yes, it is.
And the moment you realize that you can beat these numbers, right, by staying relevant, by developing skill sets, having self-awareness, I think it's important to know that this is half of your mental health conditions gone out the window.
Right.
The remaining is, I would say, perhaps not a word, but dealable with.
Right.
And that's what Gen Zs need to realize in their whether it's university years or post-university, that there is always it's much more promising world out there today than it was in previous times.
Much more opportunities.
Absolutely. My father used to say the same thing to me. My late father always say, you guys are brought up in a very good environment. Our was really tough.
Right.
And then his father would say the same thing to him.
That's true.
The reason
I used to walk miles to school and in the sun and the heat.
And
with exaggeration.
Someone was joking to me about it. He said, my father used to say I used to walk 8 kilometers to school. And the school, not only just 8 kilometers, it was on the other side of the river. So I had to walk over. So he said, I told my father, why did you build the school on the other side of the river anyway, if all the students were here? So there's one perspective, but for jokes' sake. But nonetheless, but that's true, because life was very different back then.
Yeah,
and maybe perhaps we see it as something that mothers and fathers always say.
Yes.
But a lot of it's true. And you only realize when you become one, perhaps.
Right.
When you reach that. And Gen Zs perhaps will realize a lot when they become, how millennials felt, just the way millennials realized how baby boomers felt.
That's true.
So it's a chain. But yes, statistics are very alarming today. And there needs to be a mechanism to, from a social perspective, from a cultural perspective, to make it easy, or to make it more, let's say, doable, things doable for them.
Thank you so much, Hassan. It's been an absolute pleasure. Just as a takeaway, 3 quick tips, 3 advice to our viewers and listeners out there on how they can make, like we've been talking about, stress to use it in a positive and not be debilitating, and let it allow them to burn out, burn in, whatever you want to use, and be able to just move forward, because as it is, entrepreneurship is already hard, so we're not going to make it harder on ourselves by creating things that may not be existing, like the what is it, the imposter syndrome, or, trying to compare yourself to someone else who might be on a different timeline, right? We spoke on a lot of these issues.
Absolutely.
That might keep them stuck. So what would be the 3 takeaways, if you will?
I think I'll give you 3 plus 2.
Okay.
I would like to perhaps leave with this thought, that protect your mental health,
Yes.
always. Because this is not only just your well-being, but of those around you. You may
Absolutely.
be someone someone may be dependent on you. You may be a husband, you may be a brother, you may be a sister, you may be a breadwinner, sole breadwinner, be the mother, be the sister in the house,
Sure.
brother, father, or so. So you have a lot of dependents vouching and looking up to you. So always prioritize mental health and protect it. Number 1, make time for yourself.
Self-care, absolutely.
Always. That's really important. We forget that.
Yeah.
And
But we remind you when we get on a plane, right? What did they say, when the mask comes down? You
Absolutely.
put it on yourself first, and
then the one next to you, even if the one next to you is a child.
exactly,
it's about-
even if it's your own child. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I think that particular training of being on the plane, for example, is very important. It's giving a very important message.
Right.
So it's about prioritizing yourself, make time for yourself. And it's not about being selfish, but if you
It's
are
actually selfless.
absolutely, if you are well, all right, I think you can serve better to those around you.
Absolutely.
And seek professional help when needed. This is generally is considered to be a taboo in the society in many cultures. So I think this is something that you shouldn't let this approach of society keep you
Hinder
from
you
getting
from-
help.
Yes.
Because this is about you being well for those who love you, for your loved
Absolutely.
ones, be it your family, your friends, or otherwise. Join the support group.
Yes.
Just in very layman terms, you can say, yeah, I need to stay sane.
Yes.
So this is one of those avenues where you can continue to stay sane and
Right.
continue your work as well. At the end of the day, there is only so much that you can hit on the top RPM, but at the end of the day, you have to switch off the car for a bit,
Right.
for the engine to relax,
Right.
and then rejuvenate, and then start again.
Right.
Number 4, take breaks whenever you're working towards something.
Or naps.
Or naps. Or have a napping pod, much better.
Yes, exactly.
I think that's the next project. But yes, take those breaks, develop yourself. Think you can. The breaks shouldn't be just being disconnected from things. Because it could be a time where you ponder, where you think of yourself. Maybe you read a book. Maybe you read
Right.
about a topic that fulfills you.
Right.
If you don't feel that fulfillment, perhaps do that to complete you and charge you up again
Yes.
for your next round of productivity. Last but not least, make sure you're fueling your body in the right way,
Yes.
but also your mind.
Absolutely.
So just like your body responds to junk food as junk, your mind responds to junk knowledge as junk. I think
Right.
developing yourself and consuming the right experiences, knowledge, through reading or otherwise, is really important. And same thing with your body. Pay attention to it. When it tells you, I'm done, I need
Yes.
rest, listen to it. Have let's say, nutritional food.
Diet, yeah.
Always have balanced diet as well, and look after yourself. Your body is what enables you to be in this world.
Right.
It's
Your vehicle.
It's a vehicle, exactly. And in order for you to realize either your dreams, your father's dreams, your mother's dreams,
Yes.
your brothers, your sisters, whoever that may be,
Right.
and if that's what's driving you, then you need this body to be in a healthy condition.
Right.
So you could, simple as that, right? Like if a 20-year-old car, and I tell you to drive from here to another country, you'll think twice. I'm like, no, I don't think this car will make it.
Yeah.
But if you have a healthy car, you don't
Yes.
think twice. You're like, yeah, I can drive. I'll be there in a few hours.
Right.
And it's going to be a fun journey too.
Right.
So let's have fun while having the journey.
Yes.
And I think I'll leave with that thought. Having fun doing things is key. Is necessary. It's not.
It's about the journey, not the destination, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So that's really important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Hassan. I could go on and on. You're such an amazing, you're just, I'm always an avid reader and I love books, but you're just a book with so much value. You
You're
just
kind.
don't want to put it down.
You're
And
very
I
kind.
really appreciate joining me today.
I'm delighted and thank you for having me over.
Thank you.
I think it was as much of a learning experience for me as well, so I appreciate that.
Yes, and we'll have you again. Of course, we need more of your valuable knowledge for our audience.
I look forward to it as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining me today. That's a wrap today for Tackle and Talk podcast. Please direct message me on any topics that you might be interested in. I have an amazing network and could have some experts to talk about that particular topic. And tune in next time, and I hope to see you on the podcast. Thank you so much.